In the immediate aftermath of Trump's latest indictment in Fulton County, Georgia, he took to Truth Social writing, "A large, complex, detailed, but irrefutable report on the presidential election fraud which took place in Georgia is almost complete and will be presented by me at a major news conference at 11 a.m. on Monday of next week in Bedminster, New Jersey. Based on the results of this conclusive report, all charges should be dropped against me and others. There will be a complete exoneration. They never went after those that rigged the election. They only went after those that fought to find the riggers." Now, first of all, let's see how I want to say this. It is cute that Donald Trump thinks that presenting a fancy report that he made, that he claims is irrefutable, is going to have any discernible impact on these sprawling RICO charges against him and his criminal enterprise. He can cosplay as a serious person with serious reports and press conferences until he's blue in the face. It does not matter. It will change nothing, and he'd probably be better served by working on his defense in the courtroom. Or don't. I truly could not care less. But Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia, responded to Trump's post, writing, "The 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen. For nearly 3 years now, anyone with evidence of fraud has failed to come forward under oath and prove anything in a court of law. Our elections in Georgia are secure, accessible, and fair, and will continue to be as long as I am governor. The future of our country is at stake in 2024, and that must be our focus." Now, first off, I know that Republicans will immediately want to write this guy off as a rhino or a liberal. Brian Kemp voted for Donald Trump. He is a conservative Republican who not long ago signed one of the nation's most severe voter suppression laws. The notion that Brian Kemp is a liberal is about as valid as the notion that I'm a MAGA Republican. But to the point of this post, even Republicans are recognizing now that Trump has zero defense in this case. Again, he can hold his little press conferences and pretend that they count for anything, but the actual truth is that Trump had over 60 opportunities in court to prove any of his baseless claims that he's made over the years about there being election fraud. At no point did he prove a scintilla of fraud, not in a single case or in front of a single judge who even he appointed, of which there were 9. Hell, the guy appointed a third of the Supreme Court, and 2/3 of that court are members of his own party, and not one of them ruled in his favor in a single lawsuit regarding the 2020 election. So the idea that Trump is a leg to stand on to further prove his ridiculous claims is an absolute joke. Consider too, while Trump is engaging in this fool's errand of still playing make-believe that there was fraud in the 2020 election that served as grounds to nullify the election results, that all of this is moot. Remember what Exhibit A from the Fulton County Special Purpose Grand Jury report says. Quote, "The grand jury heard extensive testimony on the subject of alleged election fraud from poll workers, investigators, technical experts, and state of Georgia employees and officials, as well as from persons still claiming that such fraud took place. We find by a unanimous vote that no widespread fraud took place in Georgia 2020 presidential election that could result in overturning the election." Meaning these games that Trump is playing right now are useless. The jury is starting this case with the understanding that there was no election fraud. The issue is done. It's been litigated. It is put to rest. Donald Trump may be content to waste time and engage in more games, but they will have zero impact in the courtroom. And again, not like this guy is going to take my advice, but he might want to spend a little more time working on his case in a court of law versus a court of public opinion. Now, I should note that not everyone is willing to acknowledge objective reality here. In response to this response by Brian Kemp, who else but Marjorie Taylor Greene chimed in with what I'm sure you can imagine is some very poignant commentary. She tweeted, "This is exactly the wrong message for our country and the rule of law. This indictment isn't about President Trump claiming that the election was stolen. If it was, Stacey Abrams and Hillary Clinton would be in jail. This is about a Democrat regime using every tool at their disposal to throw their leading political opponent, our party's soon-to-be nominee, in prison for life or even giving him the death penalty in our state. The future of our country is at stake, not just in 2024, but right now in 2023, and in order for us to save our country from this communist regime, we must pull together and use the power we have to stop the Democrat-controlled weaponized government." Notice how Greene says this indictment isn't about President Trump claiming the election was stolen. She's actually right. It is not about Trump claiming that the election was stolen. Trump had the right to claim that the election was stolen. In fact, in the D.C. case, Jack Smith actually noted that on page 2 of his indictment, writing, "The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular votes in states or filing lawsuits challenging challenging ballots and procedures. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. So it's true, this indictment isn't about Trump claiming that the election was stolen. This indictment is about him engaging in a conspiracy alongside a criminal enterprise seeking to prevent the certification of the election results. Again, you have the right to free speech in this country, but you don't have the right to conspire to break the law or block the certification of a free and fair election. That's what Trump and his 18 co-defendants are being indicted for. Notice too how Green says that the Democrat regime is using every tool at their disposal to throw their leading political opponent in prison. Let's be clear, Joe Biden did not indict Donald Trump. No Democrat indicted Donald Trump. No politician indicted Donald Trump. He was indicted by a jury of his peers who cast their votes based on the evidence presented. So these Republicans, like Green and the rest of Trump's allies, can cry victim until the sun goes down, but let's not forget that no one forced Donald Trump to do what he did. No one forced him to pressure the Georgia Secretary of State to find 11,780 non-existent votes. No one forced his legal team to breach a voting machine in Coffee County, Georgia. No one forced him to try and install a fake slate of electors in that state. No one forced him to pressure the legislature into refusing to accept the election results. If Trump is unhappy with the consequences here, perhaps the time to have considered that was when he was busy breaking the law. And finally, let's please dispel with this notion that Donald Trump shouldn't be prosecuted because he's a leading candidate for the Republican nomination, or any politician. It shouldn't matter if the guy was the king of the world. We are either a nation where no one's above the law, or we're not. The argument that Trump can't be prosecuted because of his candidacy is tantamount to Republicans basically claiming that a presidential candidate can do whatever he or she wants, that they're above the law, which is not only completely antithetical to everything this country stands for, but think about the job they're running for. A president's job is literally to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. Do you really think that a perk of that job is that they also shouldn't be subject to those same laws? Does that really make sense? Republicans love throwing around words like communist regime, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is actually arguing that Trump should be treated more like the ruler of a communist regime as opposed to someone in a constitutional republic. So look, the fact is that Donald Trump will do and say anything to distract you from the reality of this indictment, which is that he engaged in a sprawling scheme alongside his criminal enterprise to stop the certification of the election. So he can cry foul all he wants, he can make little PowerPoint presentations, he can declare himself innocent, he can summon whatever disgraced sycophants he can find to pretend that he was justified, but it's all an act intended to trick Trump's own base. He has so much disdain for the very people who trust him that he's willing to engage in day after day of lies and deception for the express purpose of manipulating the people who trust him most. The people who should be most disgusted here are the ones who cast their ballots for the guy, because those are Trump's principal marks. I've said it before and I'll say it again, there is no one who Republicans hate more than their own voters. So we're certain to see more theatrics, more lies, more distortions, more obfuscations, but all that matters here are the facts. And that's what the jury will take into account when they finally vote to convict Donald Trump in Fulton County, Georgia, for one of the worst crimes against our democracy in this country's history. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem.